All right, former Vice President and Democratic nominee for President Kamala Harris signaling she may be back.
I am not done. I have lived my entire career a life of service. I have not decided yet what I will do in the future.
But when you look at the bookies' odds, they put you as an outsider, even behind Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I mean, is that underestimating you?
I think there are all kinds of polls that will tell you a variety of things. I've never listened to polls.
Oh, now here's California Governor Gavin Newsom coming up on the side lane, breaking some news on that front this weekend. Watch this.
Is it fair to say, after the 2026 midterms, you're going to give it serious thought?
Yeah, I'd be lying otherwise. I'd just be lying, and I can't do that.
And he's not a liar. So joining me now, Noah Rothman, National Review senior writer, and Patrick Murphy, former Pennsylvania Democratic congressman, Iraq war veteran, and former Army undersecretary. Gentlemen, great to have you here. I want to play this from Colbert because this is something that Kamala Harris has been trying to fix ever since this moment happened. Watch.
There's generally a leader of the Democratic Party. You know, like, oh, that's the leader of the Democratic Party. Who comes to mind?
I think there are a lot of, I'm not going to go through names because then I'm going to leave somebody out.
Patrick, that was an easy question. Of course it's me. I just ran for president. She's been trying to fix that.
Yeah, listen, and I also think Barack Obama is. But I do think, though, Martha, that when you look at the Democratic Party, it's not coming from Washington. The leadership is coming from the states. You have people like Josh Shapiro, Army veteran Wes Moore, folks like even Mikey Sherrill. I know she has a tough race, but she's a Naval Academy graduate, fighter pilot. She's going to be, I think, the next governor of New Jersey.
We'll see. I mean, that race is getting pretty tight. We're gonna keep the tape on that one. Here's another moment, Noah, from this interview with the BBC reporter who had some very interesting off ramps there. I loved it when she's like, "Well, are they underestimating you?" Watch this.
There is a very serious difference between capacity to be president of the United States and the capacity to run.
Isn't it a strange message to the public to say, you know what, you need to be tougher and more able to run a political campaign than actually to be the person behind the desk in the Oval Office?
I was concerned about his ability to run for re-election, given what the campaign would require.
So, I mean, she rightly questioned the logic of that, which Kamala Harris has said for some time, Noah.
I find that just astonishing. The degree to which we've had the finest minds of the Democratic Party working on this question for 24 months, and what they came up with, what she came up with, was the capacity to run for president is different from being president. Yeah, one is less demanding. One is profoundly less of an imposition on your time and your mental capacity. And I can't be the only one who's old enough to remember Barack Obama's credit his capacity to run for the office being the demonstration of his facility and acumen that he would take into the Oval Office with him. I hope she pulls the trigger on this. I really do. I kind of doubt she will. But if she did, it would give Democrats the opportunity that they've passed on to relitigate the campaign of deception that the Democratic Party waged, and a lot of them have been staring squarely at in the interim, to say nothing of the Biden administration's record on COVID restrictions, on Afghanistan withdrawal, on the wars in Gaza and in Ukraine. All of that would come up. And I don't think Kamala Harris would navigate it especially well just by virtue of that little clip.
You know, I mean, well, you just watch what President Trump's been doing, you know, leaping through Asia and all of these countries over the weekend. And now he's in Japan and then South Korea. And we know that President Biden's own team said he worked from 10 to 4. So it is easier. In that White House, it was a slower schedule to actually be president than it was to run for president. Let's speak on the other side, and we'll put this one to you, Patrick. This is President Trump talking about who will run after him. Watch this.
Well, we have great people. I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here. We have J.D., obviously. I'm not sure if anybody would run against us. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. Or if you read it, am I not ruling it out? I mean, you'll have to tell me.
So you could run as the vice president?
Yeah, I'd be allowed to do that. I would do that. I think it's too cute. Yeah, I would rule that out.
Patrick.
I couldn't see him being the second fiddle as VP nominee. So yeah, I think he's honest when he says that. The Constitution clearly bars him from running for a third term. And if I could say to Noah's earlier comment, I actually agree with you. I mean, I think Kamala Harris was the first presidential Democratic candidate to lose the popular vote in the last 2 decades, the last 20 years. That is a mandate not to run again. There is just a genuine need in my party, my proud Democratic Party, of a new generation of leaders, and they're coming from the states, not from Washington, D.C.
Noah, real quick, does Trump find some way to run again?
I doubt it, but I think he likes needling the opposition and he likes the reaction he provokes. He should be careful, though, because when you provoke an opposition, the opposition is thus provoked, and he could lose Congress, or at least the House in the next term. And this administration has things to fear from the legislative branch. I don't think the president will give his imprimatur to a successor. I think he likes the competition. I think he likes the fight. Why would he try to end it? He'll sit back and let him.
Well, we remember when he chose J.D. Vance at the Republican convention, just a few days after he had been there was an assassination attempt on his life. And the drama, he didn't tell any of those people whether or not they had it or didn't have it. And he definitely likes to build that kind of drama. So we're probably in for another interesting round of the White House. How it all shakes out.
Hunger
right?
Games.
Exactly. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great to have you both here.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.